Greetings and welcome back to the No Channel. My name is Bernadette Johnson. I'm also known as Keziah or Kizzy. And today I'm coming to you with another video where I'm going to be talking about voting, as you see in the title, and how I have, changed my stance when it comes to voting. Now, I was from the very beginning of my upbringing, I was pretty much taught to not to really get into the whole voting thing. Because I was told, by voting, you're taking part in this wicked system. You're putting your trust in people. You should be putting your trust in God and the Most High. So you really don't need to be doing this voting. And that was especially the case with presidential elections. Because, I was taught that our vote doesn't matter. They already picked who they want to be president. The machines are crooked. That's what I was taught. The machines are crooked. So, you cast your vote. It doesn't matter, as far as a presidential election goes. And since, it was no good to take part in the presidential elections, the understanding was, well, not to take part in voting, period. So today I'm just coming to you to let you know that, I shifted my stance when it comes to voting. Now, I know some of you who are of the same belief I am, you might want to come after me, but just hear me out. I just want to I'm just asking you to hear me out. Because I just want to explain, why I changed my stance when it comes to voting. Now, one of the reasons that cause see, this didn't happen overnight. One of the reasons why I changed my stance on voting, this was years ago, and it's a sister. I won't name her channel. This was a sister. She's of the same belief I'm in, and she was talking about voting herself, and she even said that she doesn't have a problem with taking part in the local elections, voting local, because that's where your vote has more impact. That's where your vote counts. And at the time, I wasn't voting, period. And then when she said that, I was like, And then that gave me something to think about. And it was then, maybe not immediately, but it was then I started softening towards voting, at least voting locally. And I don't think, and I believe it wasn't long after that I started taking part in local elections. And then also it was another sister. Now, she's not of my belief, but she's pro-black. She's more that pro-black. She said that as far as voting, you should vote strategically. You should make an informed decision. You just don't go voting blindly for a candidate and you don't know anything about. So that also gave me something to think about, voting strategically, being wise in your voting. And that's just what I want to share, of how we should use our own, think for ourselves and not just go along with what other people say. They may say, oh, well, we shouldn't have any earthly rulers. We shouldn't be putting rulers over us and this and that. But let me say this. Yes, I understand. Yeah, our trust at the end of the day should be in the Most High. But if you read the Bible, even our ancestors, they had judges over them. They were appointed judges. Even when Moses, like when they were in the wilderness, he actually organized, a certain ones to be over a certain number, ruling over another number, judging a certain number. So there was still a form of, hierarchy or governorship. Even before we even had, the Israelites even had kings. There was still a system, there was still a structure, there was still a hierarchy of rulership. So you cannot get through life without having some type of order, some type of governorship. It'll be chaos, it'll be anarchy. So I just want to, establish that first. Yes, even our ancestors had a form of, a governorship even before, the kings came about. And so, and I just want to say, and also too, I was at it was like a community meeting that I attended, and it was a candidate who was running for a seat. And she said something that really resonated with me. She said she hear people say, I don't do politics. She said, yes, you're doing politics whether you realize it or not. She said, like when and I can't, don't quote me on it exactly, but she said something on this order. She said, when you're driving down the road, you're doing politics. Because for instance, far as like the roads, the condition of the roads you're driving on, a lot of that is due to the infrastructure of your city, of your town, of your county. And you have these local officials, they are in charge of the infrastructure of your city. When you're taking a shower, when you're taking a bath, you're doing politics because those local officials are over the running of the water system, the operation of the water system. And I was like, you know what? She said, and when you putting gas in your car, it's the same thing. You're doing politics, whether you realize it or not. And I know the Bible says, be not of this world, but we still have to live here. And while we're living here, we want to be as comfortable as possible. For as economical, we want to be as comfortable as possible. And that really gave me a lot to think about. And I just want to say, yes, that I've started voting. However, let me get this straight. I'm more concentrated on local elections, because see, that's where your vote counts. That's where your vote has the most impact, and that's where you most directly impacted, is with your local officials. And the sad thing about it, people tend to take part in the presidential elections more so than the local elections. Because it was another meeting I was in, and a candidate was saying that how, for instance, the young people, she said that how the young people, so many more young people take part in the presidential elections than the local elections. And in the presidential election, the popular vote does not even count. It goes by the electoral college. So I'm not here to say, oh no, yeah, go vote for, go take part in the presidential elections. No, my stance regarding the presidential elections is pretty much unchanged, because I see where no, your vote really doesn't count. It's the electoral college. The electoral college is what decides the presidency. They're not going to put that in the hands of the people. So yes, my stance on that didn't change, but it's more of the down ballot, voting down ballots for those on the more local level. And also too, and when I was saying about voting strategically, and when you vote, you want to know about your candidate so you can make an informed decision. You will want to research your candidates before you vote for them. A lot of these candidates, they have their websites, they're on social media. You can follow them on social media, and you can know their stance on things. And those who are, already in offices, and maybe they're an incumbent, you can even check their voting history, what they voted, what they voted yay or nay on. You can do all of that. And in every state, should have a election, website. Because I know South Carolina has a website called, scvotes.gov, where you can even get a sample ballot to see, which candidates are running and in what district, you'll find out your district and what districts, they're running for. So you have all the list of candidates that you can vote for, and you can get your sample ballot and print that ballot off, and you can, in which will have the list of candidates, and you can go through that list and research all of those candidates. And that's what I do, because there are things that are deal breakers for me. Now I don't, affiliate with a particular party, Republican, Democrat. I'm more of an independent, but I'm more of a left-leaning independent, because there are things about, Republicans that are, deal breakers for me. And there are things about the Democrats that are deal breakers for me. So no, I don't affiliate with either party. And that's why I like to research, my the candidates. Because if I look on their website and they stand for things that I'm firmly against, I said, well, I can strike them off the list. They won't be getting my vote. So no, you have one side. Because like for me, I'm more social wise, I tend to be more conservative. Economical wise, I tend to be more liberal. So I'm more in the middle. But yes, but it's important to, research your candidates. And so you'll know their stance, you'll know their platform and all of that. And like I said, if you're pushing something now that I'm just totally, completely against, I won't be voting for you. And there's some, and you can also write in your candidates. You can do that too. But yes, I just want to let you know that yes, my stance on voting have shifted somewhat. And like I said before, no, as far as like the presidential elections, I'm still not keen on those. State elections, a little bit iffy. Like I said, I have to research the candidates and look at their platform. Like even like state governor, certain like state senate, state house of representative seats. And if your voting record is not, it doesn't, suit me. And if you stand for things that I'm just hardcore against, I won't be voting for you. But my main, focus is the local election, like the city council members and the county council members. These are candidates. These are officials that will mostly indirectly impact you. And also too, I forgot who said this, but there's also too, like a lot of the local officials, you will stand a better chance of having a direct face-to-face conversation with them. But how likely are you to have a direct face-to-face conversation with a presidential candidate? You more than likely you won't be able to get near them. So it's wise, it's smarter to take part more in the local elections. And also, it's important that we teach the younger people to see the importance of the local elections and not so much the presidential election. Because when the young lady said that about the young people taking part in the presidential elections than the local elections, I said, is that because the media promotes the presidential elections more so than a local election? You said yes. And I can see that. That's because they see it as presidential elections more so in the media. And their vote doesn't even count. But yes, it's our responsibility to teach the young people the importance of, voting locally. And how also too, I was in, one of those meetings, and it was said that how civics used to be taught in schools. Civics is no longer being taught in schools. And that's the sad thing, because I really enjoyed civics. Because when I was in high school, I learned civics. And that would be a way to also educate young people in how the, political system work. I know there's a lot of dirt in the political system. I mean, that's local and non-local, from the top to the bottom. But the thing is, we still have to live here. And we want to live as comfortably as possible. We want to live as easily as possible. And we have officials, in these positions. And we want to make sure we have, halfway decent officials in those positions. And as long as we live here, we have to do what we have to do. And until, the Most High, brings about that change, bring forth a new heaven and a new earth, we have to do what we have to do. But I just wanted to share, my stance and how it has shifted regarding voting. So you can make what you will of this message. But this is my stance, and I just hope that it's given you something to think about. So until next time, be blessed.